Let's get on to our next topic. Do you feel safe in the UK after thousands of counter-protesters rose up against the riots? Narinder among them. 0207 862 2222. Before last night's show of solidarity, the former Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf said he and his family may leave the UK due to safety concerns. He said other Muslims in the country are asking the same question. And here he is speaking to John Sopel for the Newsagents podcast.
What has the last week felt like?
It's felt utterly horrendous. It is a strange feeling, John, when your very sense of belonging is questioned. We are now seeing the culmination of, not years actually, decades of anti-migrant, anti-Muslim rhetoric being normalised in a political discourse, now playing out in the most horrendous, violent way possible. And that genuinely makes me question whether or not my family has an existence here in the UK or not. And by the way, I'm not the only one. I've had hundreds of messages from the Muslim community saying the exact same thing.
Meanwhile, countries including Canada, Australia, Thailand and India have issued travel warnings for the UK amid the riots. Now, we've spoken, Narinder, about your concerns. You're Sikh, I know. That hardly has any bearing on what people make of you in the streets if they're angry about something. You're worried about your kids?
Yeah, we spoke Monday, Tuesday, I think. No, me and my husband haven't been sleeping. I'm full of anxiety. I mean, my mood's a little bit lifted today because I went there last night and I felt there was a bit of hope. But actually, the bigger picture is that my husband and I had a serious conversation, which I never thought we'd have, about actually, shall we move back to Punjab, where we belong, where our parents came from, and where we won't be in fear of, my son being beaten up or my husband being beaten up or being attacked or, the death threats that I've had. And do we actually just go back to the country where our parents came from? My dad used to say years ago, they're going to chuck us out one day. They're going to throw you out one day and you need to be prepared to go back to India. And I used to think my dad was mad for saying that. But actually, his words are ringing true today, because the way politicians, right-wing media organisations have whipped up hate towards people of colour, in particular Muslims, is a disgrace, and there needs to be an investigation.
Chris, what do you think of that?
I don't accept that premise that this has been whipped up by the media.
By the media and politicians.
Underlying all this, there is a genuine concern in the country about the population explosion. 2 million extra people in the last 10 years. Can we accommodate all those people? We've got the boats coming in people on those boats in very large numbers, and people are concerned about it.
No, they're not concerned. I've
just been through a general election campaign, knocked on lots and lots of doors, and I know from talking to people that they are concerned, and to suggest that
hang on, let him finish.
To suggest that the people in Christchurch are racist is absurd.
No.
These are not people who are racist. These are people who are concerned.
Narinder, why do you say he's giving them misinformation?
They're concerned because you're giving them misinformation and lies. It is a fact that especially some Tory politicians have been feeding the general public lies. And you cannot legitimise...
What lies? What like?
Well, Suella Braverman, all the lies she's been telling, all this Islamic rhetoric, this anti-Islam, that they're the problem. And Tory politicians have got a responsibility. I do not expect my politicians to be lying and giving misinformation. Therefore, the public...
let Chris defend himself.
The public feed on this.
I'm going to put out a fact and see whether you accept this. And that is that 18% of our prison population describe themselves as Muslim. And that is 3 times the proportion of Muslims in the population.
Well, I'll give you another fact.
That is a fact.
I'll give you a fact that I think it's 18%, I don't know if you can check, of our NHS are immigrant people.
OK, well, that might be... it might be.
We can balance that all day, but you as a politician, Christopher, are giving out this rhetoric that, 18% of prison population was... Again, you're inflaming all of this.
I'm not.
Have you got no idea what's going on in the country right now? People of colour, lives are at risk. And you're sat here on national TV saying, actually, the population in prisons is Muslim, 18%. That's a terrible thing to say
Let him answer.
Now.
Well, I've just described as a fact.
You're adding
hang on,
petrol.
Narinder, don't.
Let's look at what has happened recently. People were really alarmed to see 3 young children murdered in the horrific circumstances in which they were murdered in Southport. And they were so shocked about that they engaged in civil disorder.
They were lied that it was a Muslim.
No.
The perpetrator was Muslim.
Just let me make my point.
Let him get to the end.
And I'm going to draw an analogy between that and what happened in 2011 in Tottenham, where we had a situation where a man of colour was shot by the police, and that created an enormous reaction in the community.
Only in one community, not across the country.
In the community in Tottenham, which then led to riots across London.
Through misinformation, right? You both agree that there was misinformation on it?
But that was not the 2011. That was just in Tottenham. But you're talking about the murder of 3 beautiful young girls. And actually, the reason we've got riots is because these rioters, these thugs, these terrorists were actually given misinformation by media, by their little leaders, that this was a Muslim perpetrator. No. He was actually Christian.
Okay.
Yes, they were. That's a fact, Christopher.
No one has been convicted yet. Let's just remember that. Josie in London, I gather you were at the Walthamstow rally yesterday.
I was indeed there, yes, and it was a very uplifting experience.
Feel safer? Do you think the country's safer now?
I think some people have had an awakening that you just can't stand by and not get involved. What made me upset was a lot of my Muslim and black ethnic minority friends were too scared to go out on the streets yesterday because they felt threatened. But in actual fact, enough of us came out to show that we're not in support of what's been happening. These are a minority, an absolute minority of the English people that are going out and causing all this trouble. And it's really important that we show that balance, that because they basically hijack things. This minority of people, they're taking up police time, police money, they're making my friends feel unsafe in their own country. I don't want people like the previous speaker to leave this country. I love London because it's multiracial. We've got people from everywhere. We all work together. We live together. I was in a shop a few weeks ago.
But
Josie,
let me finish what I'm saying. There was a
You've gone on quite a long time, but carry on. Yeah.
There was a Hindu guy, there was a Rastafarian, and there was me. And we were all talking and having a laugh. And at the point of that conversation, I said, and this is what I love about living in Walthamstow. We all get on. We get on.
Different. London is different. But hang on, Josie, just a sec. Christopher, you think that's all valid, or you think there's a separate Christchurch thing, which is actually there are some pockets of the UK where people do want things to be more like they were in the 60s?
No, I don't think it's anything to do with harking back to the 60s. I think we are essentially a tolerant country and a law-abiding country, and that when we find that the politicians can't deliver on their promises, then people feel let down. That's the background.
It's maybe We'll get on and talk a bit more about this. I know you want to say some more. Narinder. I suppose the issue is whether the answer to the riots is to listen to the rioters or whether it's to just lock them up. That's probably where we have a disagreement here. Hello again, Narinder and Christopher are with us this morning. Later we'll be asking if you think pensioners who are still working should pay national insurance as well as obviously straightforward income tax. Now we're asking if you feel safe in the UK after thousands of counter-protesters, Narinder among them, rose up against the rioters. 0207 862 2222. We saw pictures in one area of potential rioters having to be protected by the police. Angela's in Merseyside. Hi, Angela.
Hello, good morning.
It looks like the tide is turning a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, we're making progress, but I think we need to go to the next step now and tackle the online. And especially, I will always call it Twitter. I'm not on there, I can say.
Oh, it's awful.
I think it is. It's dreadful.
Yeah.
But if we all back off, because he's only interested in money and power, we back off, and even some of the big companies themselves back off and take it off their websites, right? Then he's going to suffer, and the people who are searching for the people that are using it to send messages will have an easier job at finding them.
I don't know whether the sort of muster points for rioters are out on Twitter or whether it's sites like Telegram, which is a more right-wing site. I don't really know. So it might be Twitter say it's not them. But the thing is, Angela, yes, OK, you can crack down, you can arrest them, you can close down Twitter maybe if you really want to. But do you not need to listen to what they're saying or not?
Well, yeah, that listening to what they're saying means the authorities can watch them. If the people, like the people that went on the street, are not on there, then he's got less numbers on there gaining money.
Yep, good point. Thank you.
Him.
Thank you, Angela. Alice in Manchester, do you feel safer as a result of the last few days and the way it's worked out?
I feel quite safe, Jeremy. To be honest with you, people can go on sort of kumbaya their way through these, demonstrations that they had yesterday. It's lovely. It's great.
But hang on, what do you mean? Kumbaya means all sort of sitting around, warming their hands at the campfire,
saying
playing
that, yes,
acoustic guitar.
They're not facing the facts. We still have to deal with the problem of immigration. Okay, now, first of all, can I just say, I am an Indian by birth, but I consider myself British first, which is more than certain people who appear on your panel do. For them to the woman
Alice,
who's
so are
actually
you
on
telling me
at
you're
the moment.
brown, that you're an Indian?
Oh, here we go.
Are
she
you
can't,
though?
So she can't keep her mouth shut.
No,
But Alice,
I think I think you're referring to Narinder, are you?
Alice, you said that we need to be talking about immigration. Of course we do. But actually, let's talk about the riot and the racial terrorism up and down our country, where people of colour are fearing their lives. Should we talk about
Alice
that
is
first?
a person of colour.
No, I'm a woman of colour, and I don't feel... I'm
You're
not
a woman
going to
of
fear
colour.
Hang on, let Alice speak.
Of course I'm a woman of colour, just like you, but unlike you, I don't go on banging on about racism all the time, OK? Now, the fact of the matter... No, please, let me speak. Can I speak?
She literally breathed in, Alice. She's got to breathe or she'd die.
She was getting ready. She was getting ready.
No,
like
she literally inhaled.
OK. Can I just say, one of the things I wanted to say, I'm glad that she's actually on the panel today. I am, yes, one of those women or one of those people that you called a coconut. I voted for Nigel Farage, not because of any other reason except that I consider myself British. And yes, I do believe we have to deal with immigration and the boats coming over. With regard to the riot, I mean, come on. Of course, we've always had yobs. These yobs came up.
Can I talk now?
Yes, go on. Let Narinder come in. I think you've...
So Alice, there's been brown men being dragged out of cars, racial profiling on roads. We've got Asian businesses being looted. We've had Asian women being kicked in the head. We've had black men being beaten up. So you think that's... that's just yob.
So when did all this happen?
Well,
happened in the last couple of days.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there was...
And lots more, by the way, Alice.
And what about those Muslim men that went
So you want to
with
talk about the one incident as opposed to the hundreds of racial terrorism?
I'm going to move on. Thanks, Alice. Joe in Sheffield, hi.
Oh, morning. Sorry, I'm just a bit shocked by the previous caller. Narinder, please keep banging on as much as you possibly can, because you've got my support.
Well, poor old Christopher can't get a word in at the moment. We'll get him back in a sec.
Thank goodness for that.
Well, what do you think Christopher said that you don't agree with, Joe?
I don't think that he acknowledges the significance of... Narinder said about Suella Braverman, etc.
Oh, I see the Conservative Party's views on this.
Well, exactly.
Well, yeah. I'm having to fill in the gaps here, but
the influence that she's had. I've spoken to on your show to Yasmin Alibi Brown, and I called her a little star, and I'd apply that to Narinder as well.
Well, let Chris come back. Chris, your party's being criticised. Hang on, Joe. Chris, your party's being criticised for stoking it.
Well, that is a ridiculous accusation. And what I'm concerned about is that so much of this discussion is looking at this through the prism of colour and race. It's nothing to do with that. It's about criminality and whether people support the rule of law. And if people are criminals, then regardless of their colour or race, they should be put behind bars. And that's what we're talking about. And trying to...
But black and brown people are being targeted.
Well,
only brown and black, and particularly Muslims, are being targeted.
Okay. I'm going to just draw your attention to the fact that in Hartlepool, in May, there was an asylum seeker who was convicted and sentenced to 44 years imprisonment for an unprovoked murder of a 70-year-old pensioner.
We're talking about the riots now.
And so that is a fact. That was in the papers.
Incident.
44 years,
So people in Hartlepool will have been aware of that. And you don't seem to want to accept that.
No, we do accept that, but you're not accepting. You've just brought up one incident of an asylum seeker. So again, you are demonising asylum seekers. Why not just say a man? You're demonising asylum seekers again. You have thrown petrol on the flames. We've got a country with the streets on fire right now, with brown people fearing their lives. Do you have no compassion?
Let him answer.
That asylum seeker demonised himself by murdering somebody.
But we've got white
hang on,
men
Narinder, let's take another call. Thank you, Joe. Jacqueline in London. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Jeremy.
I don't know your situation. Do you feel safe in the UK?
No, I don't really feel safe at all, especially the checkpoint, I think, was in Bristol, where they were checking the cars if those were passengers or those in the car were actually white and English. So that really took the situation to a whole new level. The only thing I wanted to ask, obviously, what do we do with the people or children born of people of colour who are actually born in the UK? Obviously, they're going to grow up thinking that this country is theirs, they belong here. So with the riots, obviously the rhetoric that has been going on, and the vandalism. What do we do with these babies? What do we do with these children? As a parent myself, I've got 2 children who are born in this country. Now, they're going to grow up to understand the history. Right. Do they feel welcome?
Understood.
Of course, they're not going to feel welcome because the things...
Thank you. Jacqueline, sorry, I just want to take one more call before our break. Thank you so much for your good point. Dawn in London, what do you want to say? Do you feel safe?
I wanted to pick up on something that Christopher Chope just said about people elsewhere in the country. As a black person born in London, I don't often feel very safe, and most recently I've not felt safe at all. But what he said about people elsewhere in the country feeling let down by politicians not following through on their promises, it's exactly how they go about fueling this ridiculous fire that's broken out and feeding on people's ignorance and other people's fears. This is what conservative rule
Chris, answer, because again, attacking the Conservative Party here. So it's feeding the fuel.
Well, the last thing we should be doing is patronising the voters. But what we should be recognising is that over 4 million people in the general election voted for reform. That's not my party. They voted for reform. And why did they vote for reform? Because they were very dissatisfied with the performance of the previous government and didn't want to put any faith in Keir Starmer.
OK, thank you. Thanks for all your calls. Wow, lively show this morning.